Welcome back to Psalm 22, and today we're going to take a look at 3 verses, which is more than normal, but I also want to try to keep us on pace to get towards the crescendo of this psalm as we approach Good Friday and Easter. As we've been going along, we've seen how many times the details and some of the wording here show up either on the lips of Jesus while he's on the cross, or perhaps in some of the narrative details. We even have more of that to come. So I want to try to get close to the end as Easter approaches. So we'll do 3 verses today. They're not super complicated, but there's some interesting stuff to dig into. So let's read it together. We'll first do verses 11 and 12, then we'll do 13 here in a few minutes. Me apostes ap emu, hati thalipsis ingus, hati uk esten ha boethon. So that's verse 11, now verse 12. Perie kuklosan me, maskoi paloi, tauroi pianes perieskan me. Well, if you recall, the psalmist in the prior verse has praised the Father, the one who took him from the womb, and now he's going to continue petitioning him. And he begins by saying, "Do not turn away or depart from me." So apostes here is from aphistemi, and this is a second singular aorist active subjunctive with that may here, but it's functioning more or less like an imperative. You can sometimes do that with the negated subjunctive. So he's saying, you, God, don't depart from me. Don't leave from me. So apemu there. Now he's going to explain why. Hati, why does he not want God to abandon him? And he begins with thlipsis. That means tribulation or distress, something to that effect. So distress, ingus, that means is near. Notice there's no verb here, so we kind of have to supply that. So it's nearby. Or near here. So distress is near. Now, why is distress not being near? Why is that a problem? Here's another hati, because, or this is, why this is a problem for him. Uk esten, there is not hot boethon. Now, this with the article here, the nominative singular masculine ending there, so present active participle, boetheo means to help. So this is substantival. It's a helper or someone who is helping. So there's no helper. If you leave me, in thalipsis, if distress is drawing near, then there's no one who's going to be around to help me. You alone, O God, are the one who can help me. Now, he's going to explain further why he's in this bad situation. Next verb, perikuklosan, here is from perikuklao. Now, kuklao is actually the ultimate root form of words like circle or to encircle. And so that's actually what this means. This means to encircle. And it's going to be a third plural aorist active indicative with that son ending with the past time here after the peri. And so some group of people, plural, is encircling me. And we find out that it's maskoi paloi. And so maskoi here is going to be calves, small cows of some sort, small, young bulls or something like that. And there's many of them. So many bulls or many young calves, if you will, have surrounded me. And then in a parallel way, we see tauroi pianes. This is the more formal word for bulls. And pianes here is kind of interesting. This means fat or maybe even sleek, well-fed, big, nice, healthy bulls. Perieskan me. That's from periecho, another third plural aorist active indicative. That means to surround. So it's a synonym to perikuklosan. So they have surrounded me. Now, if you're familiar with the psalm from an English Bible, you might be aware that this final clause here in verse 12 is going to read something like the mighty ones or the mighty bulls of Bashan. Bashan there in Hebrew is referring to a particularly geographic area that was known for its large bulls. And so my sense is that the translator here, let's assume the translator of the Septuagint Psalter isn't in Palestine. Most would argue we're talking Egypt most likely. Maybe he wasn't sure what this meant because it is a bit of a strange phrase. And so they end up with, big healthy bulls or something like that. And in fact, the Vulgate agrees with that. So Jerome even translates it that way as well. He leans in the direction of these big healthy bulls as opposed to these mighty ones of Bashan, perhaps in an attempt to make it more clear to his reader what's going on, because maybe they don't know where Bashan is or what have you. So that is verse 12. Now let's take a look at verse 13 briefly here. Enuixan up eme tat stoma auton, hos leon ha harpazon ke oruamenas. So he's further describing this antagonism of these enemies, and we begin with this verb, enoixon. This is from anoigos, the third plural aorist active indicative. That means to open. And so they've opened something like against me, tastoma altone. So these bad guys have opened their mouth against me. And then he's going to, so we have this bull imagery, so that's bad enough. Then he's going to now pivot to a different animal as a lion. So leon here is lion. Harpazon, that's going to be from harpazo. That means to snatch. Maybe it's almost like a predatory kind of verb here. And this is going to be, once again, a substantival participle. It's not a singular masculine present active participle. So it's almost like a prowling or snatching lion. And then he's further described as a lion that is oruomaying, if you will. That means to roar. And this is going to be a noun of singular masculine present middle participle. So we have a snatching, a really almost like devouring kind of lion, and also he's a roaring lion. So the enemies are really on him in that respect. Now, this particular verse is not used directly to describe Jesus. We're going to see some similar verbiage soon in the psalm that is going to describe his antagonist there as he is crucified. But most scholars would argue that this particular line about the mouth of the lion and so forth is actually reflected by both Peter and Paul. It's not a direct citation with like an introductory formula per se, but I think it is fairly clear. 1 Peter 5:8, Peter says this, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, so he's referring to Satan, of course, he prowls around. That's not the same verb that we have here, but he is called the roaring lion. So notice you have the host, you've got leon, and then you have this exact verb. So you have those three words together. So a lot of Bibles will footnote that maybe Psalm 22, verse 13 is in view. And then Paul says, hey, he's describing what he's been dealing with in his own sense of suffering and persecution. He says, through all of that, 2 Timothy 4:17, the Lord stood by me, rescued me, took care of me, and I was rescued from the lion's mouth. You have the stoma here. You got that stoma plus the lion as well. And so what's interesting, if this is a connection, that one's a little bit vague, more vague, but I think there's something to it. Just as Jesus himself is now petitioning the Father to rescue him from the lion, if, again, the psalm is voicing his own distress, then Paul here is petitioning Jesus now as Lord to rescue him from the lion's mouth. And so really quite interesting that Paul is applying that. And you see that actually a few different times, Book of Acts and the writings of Paul, where he will use stuff that has often been applied to Jesus, and he will apply it to his own situation, almost as a way of imitating Christ. So interesting stuff there, Psalm 22. See what you think about those connections, but that ends it for today.